Hi, and welcome back to the Wild Violet Healing Podcast. This is the third episode of the On and Off the Mat series, and I am Erin. Today's episode was a few weeks in the making because I wanted to do a personal study of Bhakti Yoga. I wanted it to be more authentic than just researching and telling you about it. So, before I get into my experience with beginning to practice Bhakti Yoga, let me do a little of explaining what it is. My knowledge from prior to this recommitment to studying yoga was apparently very limited. I knew that it was devotion based and could function with any form of the divine the practitioner believed in. It could fit someone of an Abrahamic faith or pagan or just anyone. I knew that a mantra practice fit within this yoga path, as well as kirtan. I'll explain what this is soon. But those very broad ideas did not do justice to what this yogic path is. I found a wonderful blog that I've linked in the show notes that gave me a rundown of the 9 forms of bhakti. All right, this is a lot of Sanskrit, so bear with me. Shravana, Kirtana, Smarana, Padaseva, Arkana, Vandana, Dasya, Sakya, and Atman e Vedana. So just that detail already blew my previous knowledge out of the water, and I felt really excited to learn more. Shrava is reading or listening to stories and praises of the divine or holy figures. It lets the practitioner get to know them a step removed. Hearing about another's experience is an introduction, a way to start letting the divine into our hearts. That's my cat that you might hear in the background there. Much like when children listen to fairy tales and learn moral truths, reading about the divine makes an impact on our minds, attuning us to those thoughts and ideas. This form here, is also where the mantra practice comes into play. Japa is continuously repeating the name of the divine as a prayer, a mantra. This would be similar to reciting the rosary or the Lord's Prayer over and over. Kirtana is singing to the divine and is often done in a group. Kirtan is often a call and response song or chant where the leader sings the name or the mantra and then the group repeats after them. But this form is not limited to Kirtana, this form of bhakti practice. Worship music in general would fit here. That feeling of connection that fills a room when one sings praises to their divine with others, not caring how they sound, simply offering their voice and love to the divine. Smarana is the constant remembrance of the divine, bringing your thoughts and awareness back to the divine all day, with learning of the divine, with singing, with feeling that heart pull to be walking with the divine. Continuously pulling your mind to the divine cultivates your thoughts, separating you from your attachment to this world and elevating your awareness toward the divine. This can be done with images of the divine in the form you respond to, symbols placed in your space with intention, playing a chant or worship music throughout the day, wearing a piece of jewelry that reminds you of the divine. This form is very personal in how you cultivate it in your life. Padaseva means service to the lotus feet of the divine. This is where we have that connection to karma yoga, that in lovingly serving someone else, we are serving the divine within them. You can serve on your own, serve in community with others, or globally. If you want to know a little bit more about that, go back and listen to my On and Off the Mat Karma Yoga episode. Arcana is building the relationship with divine through rituals and ceremonies. This can be found across religions and practices, as well as be deeply personal to you. Here, The practitioner is cultivating a relationship outside of themselves, which is the bridge to being able to find the divine within themselves and nurture their relationship from there. In Christianity, taking communion and praying at meals and before bed could serve this idea. This could also be as simple as lighting a candle before your spiritual practice. Vandana is physically bowing down. Many religions practice some form of bowing, whether in prayer or before an icon or an elevated individual like a guru. The purpose is to create humility within the practitioner so that they may separate from their ego, learn from others, and bring themselves closer to the divine. Dasya is direct service to the divine, where any of your actions are done with the divine at the forefront and for them, whatever form that may be. Sakya is the personal relationship that the practitioner develops with the divine. This is unique to each person. It has been supported by all the other forms of Bhakti Yoga that have been cultivated into this deeply loving relationship. The other forms have the potential to become unnecessary once reaching this point, because the love with the divine has become so present in daily life. Atmanivedana is that final stage, the self-realization, where the relationship with the divine is all-encompassing and your individual identity has been surrendered into the divine, that final stage toward enlightenment. So that is very briefly the 9 forms of Bhakti Yoga. Now, how was I going to try practicing this path? Well, first I needed to know how I wanted to view the divine. I know that sounds like I don't know that information yet, but it's more that I needed to identify which form of divine energy was calling on my heart the most. I have been working on cultivating a relationship with multiple deities from different pantheons. Each allows me to concentrate on a different facet of my life. For example, I've worked with the Hindu goddess Lakshmi for years to cultivate an abundance mindset around money and prosperity in general. This entire podcast is a dedication to the Hindu goddess Saraswati because it's a practice in study and learning itself. So I needed to identify who I wanted to develop that deeper personal relationship with. That choice determines how I practice, what stories I needed to find to read, what type of chanting might be most appropriate, what I would use to trigger my remembrance of that deity throughout the day, like likely jewelry to wear at the very least, but probably also a picture or small statue if one is available and feels right. What actions could I take to be in service of this deity? What rituals I can incorporate into my daily life to connect with this deity? How can I humble myself before this deity? These were the points that felt realistic to work on for practicing Bhakti Yoga right now. The last 3 types, they felt like they needed years of devoted practice before they might be accessible. But these first 6 provided me an opportunity to practice and connect now. They all felt like they build on each other and work together in developing that personal relationship with the divine. While I respect all belief systems, as long as the practitioners aren't pushing those beliefs on me, I personally align with the idea that the divine has multiple representations, each one an aspect of the divine. When I began to take action here, I tried approaching a deity I had never worked with before, but had maybe felt a tug from lately. My actions were trying to connect with this deity in a way that makes sense to me. I looked for books about them. I found a visual representation. I made a crystal altarpiece with stones that both made sense and energetic called to me for this purpose. I tried listening to music that was culturally related to this deity. And I was noticing that it felt like my actions were setting up a project. I was doing things that I had identified would align me with trying to practice Bhakti Yoga toward this deity, but I wasn't feeling anything. I will grant you this was happening alongside a more stimulating home life than I had been used to for a while, so my nervous system wasn't as regulated as I wished. But then one evening, I finally took time away from my family and shut the door. I lit my lavender and cedarwood candle that I have an established mental and nervous system connection with. I turned on solfeggio frequency music from a YouTube channel that has been very good for me lately. And I led my body through some restorative yoga asanas. I felt my body relax. I felt my mind ease. And because ADHD, I then found myself looking at the new mantra section of my asana sequencing program I use, scrolling through the 40 or so that were available. And I came across one for the Hindu goddess Lakshmi. I found myself just learning that chant and then sitting there repeating it over and over, finding a comfortable position and adding a mudra that was intuitive and I later learned is actually connected. And just getting lost in the words and the feeling that chanting was evoking. It was like a fog was clearing, like I was letting myself be led by something else, not actively choosing with my ego mind like I was previously. This felt aligned. It felt like devotion. It felt like I was connecting with something deeper, something within and outside myself. I mentioned above that I had been working with Lakshmi for years and had seen growth. But things are changing in my life again that could benefit from a little more divine help. Lakshmi was waiting for me to call on her, and now I can practice Bhakti Yoga more authentically. I already had her image on display. I have learned her chant, and I already owned books that I can read again and renew my connection with her. This felt beautiful in my heart and was already creating joy in anticipation of the relationship I would be developing with this goddess. Fast forward just over a week later from this very important moment in my yoga practice. Daily, I have found my mind remembering Lakshmi multiple times a day. When sitting at my desk, I would turn my head and look at her picture on the wall beside me. Her image has been the lock screen on my phone for years. This particular chant I learned was playing on repeat in the back of my mind, even when I wasn't concentrating my thoughts on it. And I was taking time to verbally chant the mantra at least once during the day, and as part of my ending the night routine. I practiced her mudra when I was chanting aloud. I listened to a talk on YouTube about her and pulled out my books and started reading about the Hindu goddesses again. I feel that I will be able to sustain several of these pieces in my regular yoga practice, and that with more time, I will continue going deeper. Reading on the goddesses in particular is inspiring new thoughts and the potential for changing action. Making change is hard. It's hard for everybody. It's especially hard with neurodivergence, with autism, and being stuck for so long. But these goddesses are helping to call on me to find the motivation to make change. But just in general, for now, I get to enjoy becoming more familiar with the divine, of inviting goddess wisdom to wake within me and guide my actions into a more aligned life. Thank you for joining me today and listening to me recount working on trying a new path of yoga. If you haven't yet, I definitely encourage you to try out one of my meditations that is also available on this podcast. If you feel called, please like this episode or subscribe to the podcast. Your support is the best way to help others find me. Until next time, I wish you well.